Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sports Porch. I hope that you are all doing well and welcome back to another video in my NFL Power Rankings and Team Breakdown series. If you guys have been enjoying this series so far, make sure to drop a like on this video as well as turning on post notifications and subscribing so you never miss another video. Just a reminder, every single day up until the NFL season, you will be getting team breakdowns from me, breaking down a team's strengths, their weaknesses, some storylines to watch throughout the season, as well as some key players on the field, as well as for your fantasy rosters, and then also just a brief schedule overview and win-loss predictions. So if you don't want to miss any of that, make sure you stay tuned into the channel. So let's go ahead then and talk about the Dallas Cowboys today, team number 18, who are sadly the best team in the NFC East this year, according to my power rankings. They are in the tier 3 of my power rankings, which is they are missing a few pieces / that it factor. If you want more info on that and any of the other tiers I have outlined, you can check that in the description below, and that should have all of the tiers down there. So a quick coaching analysis, general manager / owner here, in this case, Jerry Jones. He's going into year whatever. He's been here a long time. Mike McCarthy at head coach, Kellen Moore at offensive coordinator, and John Fassel at special teams coordinator are all going into year 2. And Dan Quinn is here at defensive coordinator in year 1. Strengths of this team, the receiving group is very good. Amari Cooper is, I even think, underrated at this point. I think he's a great separator, and he's proven to be a very good deep threat, especially since coming to the Cowboys. I think he really has helped Dak to elevate his game a little bit more, but we'll talk about Dak a little bit later. CeeDee Lamb also coming in last year, the 2020 pick. For them, arguably performed the best besides Justin Jefferson of those rookie wide receivers, even playing out of the slot. Michael Gallup there as well as a solid receiver for them. Zeke coming out of the backfield can do some nice stuff, as well as Tony Pollard whenever Zeke gets hurt, which is usually at least, let's face it, once a year usually it seems that Zeke has some sort of injury problems, as well as Cedric Wilson is another guy to look out for on this wide receiver depth chart. And then also this offensive line is still above average, even though they're still trying to figure out the center position after Travis Frederick retired. Former Wisconsin Badger has been replaced by another Wisconsin Badger, Tyler Biadasz, at the spot. He is still growing as a center. We'll see how long he lasts in that spot, though. They do have Tyron Smith and La'el Collins at tackle, Tyron Smith being one of the better tackles in the league. Zach Martin, the best guard in the NFL, besides maybe Quentin Nelson. You can argue between the two. I would argue those two are really in a tier of their own when it comes to guards in the NFL. And then Connor Williams as well. So this offensive line, as long as they can stay healthy, which, has been a little bit of a concern in the past, but if they can stay healthy, then they really are a great offensive line group, besides maybe that center position. Then there is also, I think, a lot of growth to be had and a lot of optimism in the front 7 of this defense. DeMarcus Lawrence being there, I think he's underrated also at this point in his career. As a edge rusher, I would say top 10 in the NFL for sure. They also have Osa Odigizua here, that what once was an amazing linebacker core kind of fell apart last year, but you still have Leighton Vander Esch, Aldon Smith. Sean Lee is gone, but they did bring in Keanu Neal from the Falcons, who's listed as a safety, but he's basically going to play linebacker for them. Randy Gregory as well, Brent Urban, and then Micah Parsons, who they drafted after, unfortunately for them, missing out on the top 2 corners in this class just based on their draft position. So they did trade down. They did grab Micah Parsons, who, already in the preseason, he is looking like a very special player indeed. Honestly, looks like he can really play some edge for them and really thrive there in pass rush. We'll see how the coverage comes along, if he develops any at all coverage ability, but, as a rusher, he's got a bright future ahead of him. As for the weaknesses for this team, oh boy, this Cowboys team is so, flawed. They're so talented, but they are so flawed at the same time. So I just said this defense has a lot of optimism, and that's the key word there. optimism. They're still not great. They still have a lot of young players, which we've seen within the past couple of years. Teams with young defenses, especially at the corner spots, tend to get roasted alive sometimes. I did like their draft picks, though. I like that all but 3 of their picks were defensive guys. Micah Parsons, as I mentioned earlier, grabbing Kelvin Joseph, a corner, in the 2nd round. Osa Odigizua, Chauncey Goldston, Nashawn Wright, Jabril Cox, who I think fell to them, and then Quentin Bohanna and Israel Mukuamu as their last defensive pick. So while this defense is young, they are growing. That's the key word. They're still young, and they're going to get burned a couple of times, especially with how many rookies they really are going to have, I think, playing a lot of significant minutes this year. And then let's just go on to the head coach, man. As being a Packer fan for years, I can tell you this. The Packers are, 26-6 since he left in the regular season alone? I mean, that right there, I think, just shows you all you need to know about Mike McCarthy. I think he kind of wooed Jerry Jones into getting this job back, and especially saving his job this year. I think simply because of the fact that Dak went down. I think without that, we might be seeing Mike McCarthy on a different team. I mean, frankly put, he always seems to get in the way of his talent, especially I think Kellen Moore here at offensive coordinator, who I think we've seen can do some decent stuff here. But I think Mike McCarthy insists so much on doing the play calling and that sort of thing that he really does. I really think he's a candidate for the worst head coach in the NFL this year. I think him and Nick Sirianni are going to be toward the bottom of that list. Those are the 2 that really jump out to me at the top of my head. It's not good here in Dallas. There were reports before Mike McCarthy got hired that they were looking at Lincoln Riley. I don't think he's going to leave Oklahoma, but I certainly wouldn't put it past him to be able to try to hit him up in the future for what I think is honestly Mike's last year for this team, because I do think they're going to disappoint. Spoiler alert. And then another weakness, I think, is that defensive coordinator. I don't think Dan Quinn has shown enough with his defenses to be able to deserve this job, if I'm being 100% honest. I don't like what he really does with his defenses. They give up a lot of points. Atlanta was not a good team last year, but hey, maybe Dan Quinn is just better as a defensive coordinator. We'll have to wait and see, right? We'll have to wait and see for this first season for them. But he does have some decent talent to work with, like I said, especially in that front group of guys there. So we'll wait and see. But I'm just, in general, not a big fan of this coaching outside of Kellen Moore, who I think can be a pretty good offensive mind in the NFL. So some storylines heading into the season. I mean, this is kind of a 2-part question, really, because of the reports we've been hearing at training camp. The now infamous, there's nothing to be worried about, there's no reason to panic tweet, or whatever that was from the Cowboys Twitter account. Will Dak, first off, be ready to go even in week 1? And will he be like he was last year, where it looked like he was putting together a solid year before his ankle got smashed into pieces? I think Dak will be good this year. I don't know if I would say lower on Dak than other people are, because I think most people are kind of on the same page with Dak, where they say he's good to great, not like great to elite. I think he's still like really outside of that tier of great quarterbacks in the NFL. He is somewhere, I think, hovering around the number 10 range, somewhere in that area, but I really just need to see a moment of takeover from Dak. I need to see a moment where he can justify the big contract that he got, especially this year after getting that big contract. Before, it was the story of a 4th-round pick coming into an injured Tony Romo spot, taking his job, and the world is all sunshine and rainbows now. The story is different now. He just got paid. He's the highest paid guy in the NFL, at least at the quarterback position besides Mahomes. But you could argue Mahomes had a team-friendly deal there, whereas we will see how this deal goes for Dak. Like I said, Dak's a fine quarterback. I think he's okay. I think he's good and can be great at times. However, I need to see him be great more times. I need to see him be great while they're down 14 with 7 minutes left in the 4th quarter. And then the next 2 questions I kind of already answered. So the first one is, First off, will Jerry Jones regret bringing back Mike McCarthy? I think the answer is yes. And will Jerry Jones regret bringing in Dan Quinn? I think the answer to that is also yes. I think it's not going to happen. But I really do think there's got to be a point where Jerry Jones looks in the mirror and decides that he needs to get a true general manager. Here's what I'll say for Jerry. I think he drafts okay. I think this year he had a really great draft, actually. He didn't get a CeeDee Lamb when maybe he needed a different position. He went all defense. I think he really did recognize the weaknesses of this team and went and attacked them. However, I think his personnel hiring and things of that nature really need to step up. The contracts that he gives out, the Zeke contract especially, looks really bad now. It's just always been... I understand it. I understand that he's trying to be loyal to people. He's trying to be loyal to his players. I'm okay with that. Pay your guys. But there's got to be a point where you have to pay Dak. You have to pay Amari. You have to pay Zeke. And you can't keep all of these guys on your roster. You have to pay DeMarcus Lawrence. You can't just pay all of those guys and expect to have anything left in the rest of your roster. And I mean, frankly put, I don't think paying Dak, when you pay for a quarterback like that, you're expecting them to be able to make up for that with the talent that they have. And frankly, I don't think Dak is that level of quarterback. I think he's fine. I think he's good to great, like I said. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Aaron Rodgers. He's not Deshaun Watson. So it really is just... I do think at this point Jerry should look to find someone to be a true general manager. Like I said, is it going to happen? Probably not, because Jerry has always been like this. He's always been the face of the franchise for the Cowboys. He's always been that guy, right, that we've seen in the past. So I'm just going to move on from that. I feel like anytime I talk about the Cowboys, I always go into this big rant about Jerry Jones in general and the stuff that he can do sometimes. I'm sure if you're a Cowboys fan, I'm curious. If you're a Cowboys fan, leave in the comments below. What do you think of Jerry Jones as your owner / general manager of everything? So let's go into key players. Right off the bat, Dak Prescott. Got to prove it. Got to prove that big deal right. I understand that he kind of got pushed to the side a couple of years, put on the back burner, and finally got his big deal. But he's got to prove it for me. Same thing with Zeke Elliott. He's got to prove that big deal right. I mean, last year you could argue Tony Pollard was a better fantasy player than him just because of the snaps that he played. That's a little bit of a blasphemous statement. I'd probably regret saying that already, but I mean, it's true. Like, Zeke needs to stay healthy. He needs to stay consistent. He needs to stop fumbling the damn ball. That's his biggest problem. I don't know where that came from, but Zeke, stop fumbling the ball. And then I would say Micah Parsons is another guy to look out for. As I said before, they did kind of get screwed out of the top two corners of this class. I think they thought Pat Surtain or J.C. Horn was going to be there at that number 10 or 11 spot, wherever they were picking at this year. I did too, frankly. I think everybody had Pat Surtain mocked to the Cowboys this year, and unfortunately, it just wasn't there for them. So they get Micah Parsons, and I think he's looked good so far. I think he has the potential to be a great edge rusher in the NFL. We just got to see more of it, and hopefully he can step up this year and really justify that pick and get a little optimism going on this defensive side of the ball, which seems like the Cowboys haven't had much of in the past. So then the best fantasy players for this team, I mean, the first two, Zeke Elliott and Dak Prescott. This is the one thing about Dak, right? In this high-powered offense with a lot of weapons, in the NFC East where the teams aren't necessarily the greatest, there's a lot of air raid going on, a lot of moving the ball through the air, and Dak's going to get his fantasy points, I'll say that. He'll probably be drafted in the top 5 somewhere in terms of fantasy quarterbacks. Maybe a little more hesitant this year coming off of that injury. So I'm curious to see what his value is this year. And then Zeke Elliott, I mean, everybody knows he's going to get the ball, at least if he's on the field. And that'll lead me into my Dynasty Sleeper player in just a second. But then also CeeDee Lamb. I debated between Amari and CeeDee, although I think I have seen CeeDee going before Amari in a lot of drafts. But I've also done a lot of Dynasty stuff this year, so that kind of makes sense. You can kind of pick your poison there between which one of those you like better. Both are great separators. Both are going to get open. CeeDee's just going to do it usually in the 15 to 5 yard range, where Amari's usually going to get a lot of those deep threat type of plays for them. So it's kind of pick your poison there between the two. I think they're both going to have similar years. Maybe Amari a little more production just because I think he still is Dak's favorite target on this team. And then my dynasty sleeper player, I do have Tony Pollard here. You know, Zeke has been prone to going down. He's a favorite of mine to draft, really, even in redraft leagues. Just to have that backup, you know, that 1 week where Zeke will go down. Maybe Zeke fumbles a couple times in a game and gets benched. That type of thing. It's very common, actually, with him, it seems. And having Tony Pollard there is something that can help with that. So then moving on to the schedule overview. Strength of schedule-wise, the Cowboys get a break. They do have the second easiest schedule in the NFL. Some key games for them, I mean, really any NFC East game. They're really going to be looking to come back last year and prove everybody wrong and just kind of prove that they are still the kings of the NFC East, which that's not the best title in the world to hold, but it is what it is. So I have them going 7-10, if I'm being honest. They do have some tougher games. They have to play at Tampa Bay week 1, at Los Angeles week 2. They have to play at New England, at Minnesota, at Kansas City. You know, they are the Cowboys after all, so they get a lot of national TV time, probably a lot of games of the week on Fox, you know, at that midday time slot, maybe some NBC night games. So you're going to see them go up against some more quality opponents here and there. I think the strength of schedule thing really does come down to the NFC East and just how poor it really is, unfortunately, for them. My floor is 5 wins. I think they have a little too much talent on this team to do anything worse than that, even if their coaching isn't the greatest. However, I think their ceiling is 13 wins. And I know it's going to sound really weird for them having a 7-win season in my predictions, but they do have an easy schedule. I don't think it's going to happen, but there's a chance I think they can sweep Philly in that series. I think they can sweep New York in that series. And then I think they'll split the Washington series. So, I mean, they do have an easy schedule. I think there are some definitive losses on there. Like, you're just not going to erase Tampa Bay, Kansas City. I think those two are locks for sure for losses. But the Vegas over-under for this team is 9 wins. I really would say this is a no bet. Because they have such an easy schedule, it's really hard to predict. Even though they do have, in my opinion, some of the worst coaching in the NFL, it's really hard to justify trying to put a bet down on this team when they could be anywhere from a 10-win team to a 5-win team in my books. So that kind of leads me into my last statement on this team. They've got some talent, right? Especially on the offensive side of the ball, which you could say makes up for a lot of the defense, which even so, they have some nice talent there, a lot of nice young talent. However, I'm making my prediction right now. I'm calling my shot. Mike McCarthy's going to be fired after this year. Like he should have been, I think, last year even. He and Dan Quinn are not going to be good this year. And just be prepared to be disappointed in the Cowboys once again. You know, once they get hyped up by the media saying the Cowboys are going to do something just because Dak is back. Although I do think the media is getting a little bit tired of trying to hype up this Cowboys team because they keep letting them down. But we will just have to wait and see until the NFL season. And that's all I have for this video on the Dallas Cowboys. What did you guys think of my ranking of them? Is it too high, too low? Let me know in the comment section below. And once again, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like on it, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. I have a goal to reach 50 subscribers by the end of this year. So if you could help me out with that, I would greatly appreciate it. And once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys on the next one.